Hi, I'm Praneeth, and welcome to my show, The Active Hour, where we discuss health and fitness, nutrition, and the blueprint to enhance your vitality. Sometimes a chat just doesn't inspire, it reshapes your grind. Today, we dive deep into neuroscience, decision making, and the power of a martial arts mind. A global strategist and a best selling author, unravels decades of wisdom on health and science. This one's with David Amerland. Hey David, how you doing?
It's so good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you so much for reaching out, and it's such a pleasure to have a chance to talk to you.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to this. I think it's such an important topic to cover,
Yeah,
and it's
absolutely.
so broad ranging that I can't wait to get started.
Yeah, all right, let's get into it.
Okay.
So tell us what childhood memory, maybe an incident in your science chemistry lab or a fond memory of yours that kind of ignited this fire in you to get into the wellness field.
well, well, it was none of that,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Like most people, I sort of tend to live. I tended to live my life in the past in a reactionary
Okay.
mode. So circumstances sort of led me to things which I sort of reap the benefits of now. I've been active in fitness since I was 13. And for me, it
Oh,
was
that's awesome.
basically, I started learning martial arts when I was 13, and I've been active in sports and boxing and different styles of martial arts since then. And I did competitive taekwondo for 10 years. And it all sounds very appealing and everything, things is really cool. But once you ask yourself why, because we don't have to do these things, right? We don't have to do them to that degree in order to be fit and healthy. For me, it was essentially a safety valve. I had a sort of high pressure lifestyle when I was growing up. As a kid, my parents moved countries and towns a lot. So I was always kind of an outsider wherever we went. And that has its
Okay.
own pressures. So I got into sports instinctively because it channeled
Okay.
the anger and the disconnect you feel as a young child growing up,
Yeah.
which is very difficult to articulate at the time. So you have two options basically: you act out or you do something. I chose to do
Yeah.
something.
And you mentioned martial arts. What kind of martial arts did you learn, and how did it help you get shape up your personality?
Well, that's a good question actually. I started out with karate because at the time it was the
Yeah.
what was accessible to me. I have a black belt in Wado Rio. Then I graduated Taekwondo.
That's so
I've
cool.
got a black belt in WTF Taekwondo, which is one style of it, and I have a second degree black belt in ITF Taekwondo, which is another style of
Yeah.
it. And the dichotomy is mostly politics, but there's a difference in the approach of each one, which is quite interesting. And I did sports in between. I did track and field and boxing and kickboxing and kung fu and those things that you sort of double in. And
Nice.
and
Yeah.
and and the question I say, how does that shape you? Well, it's a funny thing, right? Because, like I said, for me, it was a reactionary thing. I was channeling my inner angst, if you like. But the thing is, as you get better, you realize that you can't progress physically if you don't change internally. And at the time, it was a very instinctive thing for me to sort of try and work out how that was going to happen. But today, we have the science behind it. We know that neurobiologically, neurochemically, everything that happens inside us is expressed in changes outside. And the external world, by the same token, can affect our internal world. So if you do something physical, you have to dig deep, you have to change, you have to question why you're doing it, who you are, what do you hope to get out of it. And funnily enough,
Yeah.
when we talk in the world of business or even in life, sometimes we ask the who and the why. We try to work
Okay.
out who you are and why you're doing it, right? So your who is your identity and your why is your purpose. Well, in martial arts, you have to deal with that all the time. And if you're doing competitive martial arts, because you're under pressure, it's in a public domain, people will see you, everything you have done up to that point is going to be judged quite quite publicly.
Yeah.
So then you have to deal with that internally. You have to ask yourself, who am I? Why am I doing this? and you have to come up with
Yeah.
answers. And the answers are always different because they depend on where you are in your life and what you're dealing with. But as you get those answers, they become the tool that basically you use to become better.
Yeah. And how did you develop this thinking from in your heart and in your soul to connect the inner soul to the physical activities? And I think that kind of led you from chemical engineering to quantum mechanics and this entrepreneurship, right?
Well, if you study chemical engineering, it brings in a lot of disciplines from different fields of science into
Yeah.
it. So you sort of have to
But
deal
what
with
made you get
physics.
into chemical engineering first, though?
That's an easy one. Lack of
Yeah.
commitment.
Yeah. Okay.
Growing up,
Yeah. Yeah.
I couldn't see myself doing anything very specific.
Okay.
So at the time, chemical engineering was a new field,
Okay.
and I sort of thought, okay, if I do that, it's interesting, and I have the most options, and I'm not actually committing to anything.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
if it was today and I had the same choice, I would be doing
Okay.
neuroscience, right? Because it's
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's what actually got me into it, and it's a fascinating field because it brings in all these
Great.
different scientific streams of thought, and then
Okay.
you have to apply them in a practical setting. So you have to be very analytical in how you approach it, and that's where that analytic thinking comes from.
Gotcha. Yeah. So talk us through the neuroscience. How can we tune our mind and body to have that euphoria when we exercise? How can we channel our brain, the neurons, everything to concentrate on the moment that you do? Because so many times, for an instance, I feel like one of the biggest mistakes that people do is they're not present while exercising. When
Mm,
someone's trying to run, when they're trying to lift, they try to listen to music or something else to get over the pain or get over the emotion of the stress.
mm.
So how can we use neuroscience and everything channel that concentration and the mindfulness in the exercise?
That's I'm very glad you brought this up. Now I'm going to bring up a study that I used in my book,
Yeah.
where basically they looked at the two groups of hotel maids, and they took one group of hotel maids and they studied what they did, and they saw that it was
Okay.
identical with a different control group of hotel maids. So in one of them, they said, "Listen, you guys, what we're going to do is we're going to check to see what you're doing because
Okay.
we are just doing a sort of study and motion study to see what their
Yeah.
work entails." To the other group, they said, "Look, we check to see what you're doing, and this has an application on health and fitness because it's like exercise." So one group had this knowledge, the other group didn't. And they're both doing the same work. So they took all the biometric studies and they looked at biomarkers before they started. They went through a 6 week period. At the end of the 6 weeks, they basically took the same biomarkers. And this is what they found. The group that actually had been told that what they're doing has an impact on their physical health and fitness had improved
Yeah.
by up to 25 to 28%.
Wow.
The other
Okay.
group, the other group doing exactly
Yeah.
the same work, hadn't. They had stayed exactly where they were. And this now raises exactly the
Okay.
point
Yeah.
which you brought up. The moment we become aware of what we're doing, the moment we're in the moment we're focused on that, in our brain, a number of processes take place, and those processes predispose our body to
Mhm.
better respond to what we're actually doing. So let's say, take your example, we both go to the gym, we're going to lift more or less the same weight, more or less the same
Yeah.
number of times. I put on my earphones and I zone out, and I'm there lifting
Yeah.
blindly, and you're there sort of
Yeah.
concentrating really hard, feeling the work.
Yeah.
Okay, we go through a 6 week period, then we measure ourselves, and you're actually fitter than me because you
Wow. Yeah.
did
Yeah. I
that.
totally believe that.
Okay, and the reason that happens now from a neurobiological point of view, which is fascinating, is that our brain essentially is there to help us survive. Now, it's a very ancient brain, it has evolved through tens of thousands of years. We get to the modern world, we do things which, from a brain point of view, haven't got a lot of meaning. If you go to the gym and lift weights, that doesn't do anything. It's not going to help you survive. You're
Yeah.
not going to have to fight anything. But if you focus on what you're doing, then essentially you raise the priority of awareness from the brain's point of view. And if you raise the priority of that awareness, then the brain predisposes the body to basically allocate the energy necessary for the physical changes which you're going to undertake. So you're going to become stronger, which means what? Your muscles are going to be bigger, your tendons are going to be stronger, you're going to be physically more defined, your cardiovascular system is going to be more intricate than mine. Whereas I sort of blindly do it. Sure, it has an impact on me. It's not like it has zero impact, but
Yeah.
not the same amount as it'll have on you. So there you go.
Yeah. And how can we channelize our concentration and thoughts? How can we tune the brain better? Because so many times, especially now, there's so much problem with the attention deficiency, with
Yes.
all the social media and everything. People are so restless. You come and try to talk to them, explain something, they'll be like, "Oh, just fucking tell me in 2 seconds." So there's
Yes.
so much of problem with the attention deficiency too. I'm not talking about the ADHD and all. We'll come back to it later. But there's everyone says, "I don't have time. I don't have time," and then everyone with that span of concentration, how can you
Okay.
tune to improve the concentration, improve everything?
Yeah. This is an excellent question, and it has
Yeah,
such a simple answer. It's going to blow your mind. Now, there
yeah.
was another study was carried out by Stanford University researchers, and this is what they
Okay,
did. They took subjects which were already trained
okay.
and they used sprinters. And sprinting is a very brutal and forgiving sport. The time is so short, the
Yeah,
distance is so short that any kind of mistake you make is going to work against you. So sprinters work extremely
sure.
hard to improve their performance by maybe 1 or 2%, and that's really, really good. So they took trained
Yeah,
subjects, and this is what they did. They told them, and they had again two groups. There's a control group, there's the group which was being experimented on, and they said to them, look, the guys who were being experimented on, they told them to visualize that they were basically an engine. They said, be a rocket ship, be a locomotive, be a
yeah,
rocket. Okay, this is very simple visualization. And then
yeah.
they tested them. And this didn't take 6 weeks, it's instantaneous. They saw that the subjects which had this visualization element in their head improved their sprint time by
Exactly. Yeah.
13%. 13%.
Wow. Yeah, yeah.
Mind blowing, right? So this
Yeah, I know.
answers.
I was reading something the other day that when you start to visualize something so much and so deeply, that eventually your brain will also start believing that it's true. For an instance, you're training for triathlon or you're training for a race, and you keep visualizing that today my speed is 10 miles, 10-minute miles. Now if I keep visualizing I'm going to run 9:30, or if I keep visualizing myself crossing that finish line, and once you start visualizing and once you start living in it, apparently your brain will start believing that it's so true that eventually it'll apparently is going to happen. That's how you tune. But
Yes.
I was very surprised to know that this is a good connection to.
Yeah, and it's so simple, right? It is so simple, and that answers your question. If you go there, if you're in the gym and training,
Yeah,
and you're saying, well, how can I improve my performance? Well, all you have to
yeah.
do is visualize yourself being something else, and
Okay,
there's a neuroscientific element behind it. I mean, in psychology, they basically call it internal visual displacement. And
okay,
what it is that essentially you are creating in your head two different models, whereas a person who is not has
okay,
only one. So the brain, it's like it kind of splits a little bit. It doesn't really, but it kind of, it needs modeling. And then it
okay,
allocates different resources. And as it allocates different resources, the stress we feel in what we're doing begins to go down. Okay, it's like
okay.
it's
Yeah,
like it's like if I am a sort of a spectator and you're running and you get tired and you
yeah,
begin to slow down, and I'm going, come on, you can do
yeah,
it, you're almost there, right? And what
yeah,
do?
yeah.
You pick up, right?
You pick
You
up.
pick
Yeah,
up. Well,
yeah.
yeah, why? Because now you're
Easily.
focusing on me, and because you're focusing on me, your brain dumps down its perception of
Yeah.
the effort that you are undergoing and
Okay.
you're actually putting out, and because that perception
Yeah,
drops, it becomes easier. That's all
yeah,
it is. It's like you
yeah,
forget how hard it is. Okay, so
yeah,
when you go to the gym and you don't have somebody urging you on, you don't have a coach, you don't have a spectator, it's just you. If you
yeah,
say to yourself, I'm an engine, I'm a beast, I'm a
Yeah.
monster.
Yeah.
Whatever visual
Yeah.
imagery
Yeah.
you use.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that does the same job.
Wow, that's nice. So what you're trying to say is the brain doesn't know that what you want to do. For instance, if I'm kind of now kind of visualizing, just relating things that you said because when I'm trying to run or I'm trying to list, there's so many times I feel I'm exhausted, but then I have to push myself from internally saying, no, 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 you can fucking do it or push harder. So
Yes.
many times when you have a coach, recently started working with the coach and X amount of lbs I'm trying to lift, and I'm thinking, oh, I'll probably just do 10 reps. But then the coach is yelling, go one more. Then I'm able to do two more. Then I'm like, oh, even though I was trying myself, no, I can push it. But there's an external force saying, go, go, go. Then suddenly I'm able to push.
Yeah, exactly. So essentially, if you
Yeah,
have a coach, this is what happens.
yeah,
You form a relationship with that coach,
yeah.
and that relationship is based either on respect or fear, or sometimes both.
Okay.
Fear, you don't
Yeah,
want to let them
yeah,
down; they will yell at you.
yeah.
Respect, they've put in a lot of work; you don't want to let them down because you feel bad
Okay,
if you do. So the moment you focus on that
okay.
relationship, you change the
Yeah,
value differential between you and how you're feeling and how you feel
yeah.
about achieving what has been agreed on between you. And that makes all the difference. So the brain is
Yeah,
really complex. A lot of the things we
I
don't.
know. That's a beautiful topic that I want to talk to you about too. But how is it so different? Example, you're my coach. I'm trying to lift. I myself am saying, yeah, push, push, but you suddenly yell at me, go, and then it just happens. So, how is it so different when I myself am telling my brain and my body, yes, you can do one more rep or you can do two more reps, but suddenly someone externally is pushing it, and I'm able to push it. Explain about that
Well,
difference.
well, it comes down to that. This is exactly why
Yeah,
visualization works. If you're just with yourself, all you feel is the
yeah,
amount of effort that you're undergoing. So you get tired
okay,
perceptually, and there's a perceptual
yeah,
fatigue point, right? Perceptual fatigue point is a point where we feel we get
yeah,
tired, but if we were to
yeah,
undergo studies in the laboratory, we'd actually be able to push another 20, 30, 40% extra, which we don't feel we can do. Now, this is a safety valve.
okay,
The brain puts that in place because if we push to a limit, the chances
yeah,
of being injured, the chances of being exhausted become higher, and the brain tries to avoid that. So if you're on your
okay,
own and you're focusing just on yourself, what do you feel?
yeah,
You feel tired, you feel physically
yeah,
stressed, you think, oh,
yeah,
plus you have your life, right? You have emails and work and bills and sleep and food and
yeah,
cleaning,
yeah,
all that, and you have it in your head.
yeah,
And telling yourself, come on, do one more. But your brain is telling you, you know, let's do one more tomorrow. Let's do three more on
okay,
Friday. And you're
yeah,
saying, oh,
yeah,
Friday, I'll do three more on Friday. So I'm going to stop here now. And you stop, right?
yeah,
So this is bargaining going on.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Then you have the coach. The coach comes and says, come on, give me
yeah,
five more. There's no question about it. You need to give him five more. But now you've got to say, okay, he thinks I
yeah,
can do five more. And like I said, either you're
yeah,
afraid of them. If you don't five more, they're going to yell at you. They're going to make you feel bad. And you want to
yeah,
avoid that. Or you really respect them. You don't want to let them down. They believe you
yeah,
can do five more. So you push and you do five more.
yeah,
That's what it is.
yeah.
Yeah.
But you're not responsible for your thoughts, right? Because I, at one point, this is where it, again drills down to anxiety, bad thoughts. Example, listen, you're going for a test to write, and you start to get all this bad thoughts. You might fail, even though let's say you study really well.
Yes.
Oh, you might fail. You didn't do X, Y, Z. At one point, when I was thinking, oh, maybe that's true because your brain's kind of deceiving you with those bad thoughts. But then it took me a couple of years to realize, well, you're not your thoughts. But today in this episode, I want to talk a little bit deeper into that too. Tell us a little bit more about these thoughts, these pop-ups. How can you suppress them? Basically, how can you handle all your anxious thoughts?
Okay. Anxiety, which we all feel right now. Okay. We all feel anxiety.
Yeah.
Is a natural response. If we didn't feel anxious, we wouldn't be able to get worried. If we don't get worried, we don't become stressed. If we don't become stressed, our brain can't function analytically for what's going to happen next. And let's talk take a little
Yeah.
step
Yeah.
back to talk a little bit about what the brain is actually designed to do. It's designed to help us
Okay. Yeah.
survive. Okay, the only way you're going to survive in an uncertain world, and the world in the past was hugely uncertain, and now it continues to be so, but less
Yeah.
so, perhaps. The only way you can survive in an
Yeah.
uncertain world is by being able to predict the next moment. If you can predict the next moment, then you know what to do because you can anticipate it and you can prepare
Yeah.
and you can act correctly. But predicting the next moment is really, really difficult. So the brain acts as a
Hmm.
predictive machine and constantly tries to second guess what's going to happen. So we have anxiety because we run through all the scenarios and then we run through the ramifications of those scenarios. So, in your example of exam, you prepared for it, you're smart, you've done everything possible. You think, okay, I'm done, I'm just going to do whatever I have to do on the day and perform my best. But this
Yeah.
isn't what happens. You go there and you're thinking, so much is riding on this. I put in so much effort. What if I fail? What will my friends think? What will my colleagues think? How
Yeah.
is it going to look to the world? Are they going to think I'm really, really stupid? So we think of those things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
handicap us because now what's happening? Your heartbeat goes up, your throat begins to dry,
Exactly.
you become a bit sweaty
Yeah.
perhaps, your
Sweaty. Yeah.
cortisol levels begin to elevate. And if you get stressed enough and you don't handle it, you go into that exam room and you're already exhausted. You used up ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, which is essentially what every
Hmm.
cell in the body
Yeah.
uses, including the brain. So when you use it up now in your stress mode and you haven't got sufficient quantities that you need for your exam. But worse than that,
Yeah.
when you get stressed, in order to survive, the brain begins to go into energy conserve mode. So it shuts down the higher functions of the brain which you need in order to do well in your test.
Yeah.
And all you have
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
this kind of dumb idea that this is difficult, you can't do
Exactly.
it, and
Yeah.
you're going to fail.
Yeah. Exactly.
How do we deal with that? Okay, self awareness
Yeah.
is critical. I mean, everybody's anxious, everybody will feel anxiety. I have friends who were Navy SEAL commanders, and you think, oh, they're the best of the best. And technically, they are. They're
Yeah.
proficient in physical physical capability. They're really fit. They're really capable.
Yeah.
They have technical knowledge. They've trained very well. They're tactical. And these were commanders, right? They actually commanded teams. And when I was talking to one of them, he said, listen, they drop us off the plane in the middle of the ocean in a rubber dinghy.
Wow.
And
Okay.
the moment we hit the water and it's dark,
Yeah.
pretty much everything we have planned for, all the scenarios are invalid because the situation on the ground has changed.
Hmm.
And now we need to improvise. And you think, oh, and
Yeah.
you can't go back to base and start again. You have to complete a mission. So
Yeah.
this is what they do. They basically use self-awareness and saying, okay, this is different. This is
Self-awareness.
going
Yeah.
to be harder. This is not what we planned, but we're capable. What we're feeling now, which is a fear and the anxiety of the unknown, and the fact that you may die if you get things wrong. This exists for sure, but right now it's not pertinent. So we just block it off. So what do we do now? Logically,
Okay.
have
Yeah.
I prepared? Yeah, is self-prepared. Can I do this mission? Yes. How do I know I can do it? Have I got the physical capability? Yes. Have I got the equipment? Yes. Do I have the information which I need? They have to have something. If you say no, you can't do it.
Yeah.
So you go to the exam room, right, and you're prepared. You got to tell yourself, do I know my stuff? Yes. Will I be able to solve the problems? Yes. Am I okay?
Yeah.
Am I not too tired? Am I physically hurt? No, I'm not. Can I do
Yeah.
this? Yeah, you can. That's right, you can do it. And the moment you tell yourself all this, then you begin to feel more capable. Your brain begins to align,
Okay.
to
Yeah.
attune itself. And then all the study which you've done, which is essentially training for a task, it comes into play.
How can we develop this instinct to small steps to start talking to yourself and not push out any thoughts that you get?
Well, the first thing is acceptance. When you have negative thoughts, instead of
Yeah.
trying to block them, you accept them. You say,
Yeah.
okay, these negative thoughts come from a good place. Your brain is trying to protect you by running through all these
Okay.
scenarios. At the same time, your brain is not some sort of wisdom machine, it's a prediction machine. The wise part is what you are doing with it. So you got to say to yourself, well, have I prepared? Yeah, for example. Break all the
Yeah.
things down that you need to have. Have you got all the tools? Have you got all the scenarios? Have you got the knowledge? Have you got the skills? If you have all those things, then you need to ask yourself, will I fail if I have all those things? And the answer is no. You will only fail
Yeah.
if you panic and forget to use the things you have.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So the moment you say to yourself this and you accept that what you're feeling, the anxiety, the fear, the uncertainty, are part of the process, then that's when you begin to become better at basically regulating your emotions. And emotional regulation is a superpower we have in order to be able to do more with essentially less with what we have.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Do more with less. That's something that everyone in every sector, be it corporate, be it the IT field that I work in, everything, they say do more with less.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So while growing up, was there a mentor or like a science prize that kind of inspired you to get into the science field, or an inception within your childhood that inspired you wanting to go through this neuroscience field? Because you mentioned you moved from places to places while growing up as a kid.
Yeah.
Did that affect you, as in that you don't belong anywhere because you probably
Mm.
lived in place A for a certain time, B, C? So you were literally moving from place to place. And do you feel like an outsider all the time?
Yeah, absolutely. All the time. I mean, when I was writing the Sniper Mind, I had to go deep into what actually creates the
Yeah.
identity we have and the brain we have. And the neuroscience evidence, the evidence we have today, shows that up to your first 7 years, pretty much your identity, your character, is formed. This is a Jesuit thing where you say, give me the boy until he's 7, and I'll give you the man. Well, essentially, they were
Yeah.
right. And we say, okay, how is that possible? Because, age 7, you think, if you look at a child age 7, you think, they're
Yeah.
barely capable of a coherent thought. And that's not entirely true. The brain certainly is not capable of articulating coherent thoughts, but it is capable of processing
Yeah.
those thoughts. And up to that time, it's been laying down the circuits which basically connect all the different centers of the brain, which lead to the analysis the brain carries out of the facts which come in the sensory input from the outside world, which once it's
Okay.
processed, generates the emotions we feel. So if you're feeling, for instance, fearful and anxious all the time, perhaps you grew up in a situation where there's constant anxiety and uncertainty and fear. And suddenly,
Okay. Yeah.
we have those circuits and they're part of our personality, but they don't have to completely control us. We have the ability to basically understand how we work, how we operate, put new practices into place, rewire our own brain, and basically
Rewiring.
change
Yeah.
change our responses. The brain has, amazing ability to rewire itself and become even better and more than what we start out with. Otherwise, we would all start out relatively dumb and get dumber as we get older,
Yeah.
and this
Yeah.
is not the
Yeah.
case. So back to your question now, did that affect who I am? Yeah, absolutely. Because in order for us to understand who we are, we have two elements. One is the ascribed element. It's what the external world tells us we should be. You are, for instance, I don't know, Anglo-Saxon Protestant, or you are Native American, or you are Italian, whatever that is, right? The outside world
Yeah.
tells you something. You are loving husband, um, doting son, A
Yeah.
grade student. The world tells us something and
Yeah.
expects something from us. We choose mostly to accept that, and then we perform to the expected standard. But there's another element to identity, which is the avowed element, and that's what we decide for ourselves that we want to be. That comes from our own internal imagery. If I tell you, how do you see yourself inside your head? If you were to give me perhaps an animal or a thing which would describe how you feel, and you tell me I'm Spider-Man, or even better, I'm Batman,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, strong imagery, right? But with that imagery
Correct.
comes
Yeah.
an element of you which is unique to you,
Yeah.
and you have fashioned that. Okay, and we all, to some extent, have that. Now, we can take that a step
Correct.
further. And the moment we take it a step further, it becomes easier for us to control the part that was formed when we didn't have any control over that formation. And that's how we can actually grow and learn and improve and become better than we are.
Very interesting because I really like the word rewire. Our brain is like a knife, no? You have to keep rewiring it, keep teaching it constantly. So equivalent to sharpening a knife. You keep using a knife, at some point it become blunt, but you got to
Yes,
keep sharpening it.
yes,
How can we keep rewiring our brain to always stay active, always stay relevant to everything that's going on in the modern world? There's so much of change, so
yes,
much of disruption that happens in every industry. A few key points, the best practices to rewire the brain to always keep it sharp.
yes. Okay, a brilliant question, and so important
Yeah,
now in the times we live in. And let's go back to
yeah,
when we were children. That's when our brain was the sharpest, right? Why? Not smartest,
yeah,
but
yeah.
sharpest. Why? We learn things quickly.
Sharp it. Yeah,
Why? Because we absorb things quickly. We focus very much on those things. We were curious. We were playful. And as we grow up, we
yeah,
become more responsible, tired, more
yeah.
distrustful.
I always
We
think
still,
it. I go back to childhood where I don't have to think so much. Example, I'm 35 years old. This the moment I wake up, there's 100 things that I keep talking to myself. Oh, I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to, example podcasts. Or I'm working on two different more apps that I'm going to use AI and then build and do. Something that I keep pushing myself every day. And then sometimes I wish I just go back to that childhood where I'm just innocent, not thinking anything, just chilled out. But I can't.
yes,
But yeah, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that child was, what was it?
Yeah.
It was curious and it was playful. The world was an
Yeah.
adventure and was full of wonder.
Yeah.
And I think as we grow up and things become more complex, everything becomes a lot harder. In order to remain sharp, we need to be curious and playful. The world,
Yeah.
life itself is an adventure. It has its ups and its downs. It's never perfect. It's never exactly what you thought it would be, and it never quite works out exactly how you visualize it, but it does work out. That's the adventure
Yeah.
element of it.
Yeah.
Live it. Take the ups with the downs because they're part of the equation, and also be curious. The world is changing so fast. We have usually two options. We can shut ourselves off because it's getting really scary and it changes really quickly and we don't know how that change is going to affect us.
Yeah.
Or we can choose to embrace it and just think, I wonder what is happening next. How are we going to see that? And I think if we can manage to keep those two things, curiosity and playfulness, then our brain essentially is constantly rewiring itself. It's constantly
Yeah.
alive.
Very nice. So such good information too. And I also really like the information that you gave about brain rewiring and shaping your personality based on the environment. Real world example, like my brother and I grew up in the same house, same city, but he's completely different to what I am.
Hmm.
How is that? No two
Well,
siblings are the
think
same.
about it. Your
Yeah.
brother, is your brother younger or old? He's younger,
Yeah,
right?
he's younger to me.
Okay.
His 5 is younger to me. Yeah.
Okay. Now, by the time that he was born, your parents were not the same people. Their behavior was
Yeah, yeah,
different. Their situation in life was different. Their reactions were
yeah,
different, and their experience was different. So, although he grew up in the
yeah,
same house and same culture in the same city, the situation at home was
yeah,
significantly different. So when he was growing up,
yeah.
the stimuli that he was exposed to was different to yours. The circuitry in his brain
Yeah.
was formed in
Mhm.
a different way. And that also explains the personality difference.
That's very nice to know. And coming back to neuroscience, there's
Okay.
so much of disruption happening in AI. Example like the fMRI revealing the neural symphonies, AI amplifying the brilliance. What is your take on this? Where is neuroscience going to go in the next decade? And how are these factors affecting the current neuroscience now? And how is it going to affect?
Okay. Let's consider that every day that we wake up, there's some new breakthrough
Yeah.
happening in the field of neuroscience that helps us understand the brain better, and by association, understand our own operating system. And with all the things that we know right now, which is quite significant as a sort of body of work, we have only
Mm.
barely scratched the surface. The brain is
Yeah.
incredibly
Yeah.
complex, and every
Exactly. Yeah.
every fresh understanding challenges what we know, challenges what we knew in the past, and requires us to reconsider some of the things, some of the theories behind it. And think with all the science we have to date, we still cannot explain from a scientific point of view what consciousness is. We don't need
Yeah.
it, right, in order to
Yeah.
survive.
Yeah.
So,
Mm.
we have a few theories about it. We have three significant theories,
Yeah.
but no evidence at the moment. So they're just remaining in the field of in a theoretical field. Now AI is challenging us because essentially we're trying to some extent to mirror our own thinking through circuitry and wiring, and in that it's allowing us to understand some of the concepts which we
Yeah.
hold about the way we operate. Certainly, because the use of AI is an external stimulus, we're changing internally as well. I mean, classic scenario on this is the way we use transactive memory. And transactive memory essentially is remembering in our brain part of some kind of information which we may need in the future. And until maybe 2010,
Yeah.
2009, most of us sort of kind of remembered where things were, but then we stopped doing that because so much information, and a lot of us started remembering how to get it. So, for instance, I can ask you something about what's the capital of Somalia, and you may not know it,
Yeah.
but you can Google it,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you
Exactly.
know how to Google it, and that's what
Yeah.
you've actually learned, because that became the key to so much other information which you don't have to remember now. It's going to be the same thing with AI. It's just another tool.
Mm.
It's not going to replace humans
Yeah.
unless the job that humans do is so
Yeah.
mechanistic and so soulless that it can be replaced by a machine. And that's a good thing if it does that. But it is going to change the way we operate in the real world. It's going to give us a lot more information to deal with. It's going to give us great analytical tools if we don't have them. It's going to give us great comparative tools if we don't have them. It's
Yeah.
going to make us better, and then it's going to refine the way we operate as humans. We're going to need to bring something extra to the table, which sometimes we don't.
Gotcha. And what's the most exciting part about the brain? If I were to ask you top one.
Whoa. Okay, I'm always fascinated by the fact
Yeah.
that the brain has infinite memory. And you think,
Okay.
how is that
Yeah.
possible? There is a space in our head called cognitive semantic space, where the
Yeah.
brain can pretty much store semantic information. And semantic information, for those who are not aware of it, is essentially information that ascribes meaning to specific things that we see or learn or hear about. So, if you have never seen a car before in your life,
Yeah.
then you don't really understand what a car is. But you have seen perhaps a cart. And if we say, well, it's like a cart with an engine that makes it go on its own,
Yeah.
then your
Yeah.
brain immediately ascribes meaning to it and understands it without you having ever seen it before. This is magic. And the brain has the
Okay.
ability
Yeah.
to hold an infinite amount of space there. It's just incredible. So yeah, that's fascinating.
Okay.
I'm thinking, this is just
Yeah.
like it's
So then what
magic.
differentiates some people being super smart by birth and someone training to be smart that way? Example, do you like cricket? Do you follow cricket or any sport
I played cricket at school
or
in
in
Australia.
general?
I grew up in Australia, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh. Oh, you grew up in Australia. What part of
Yeah,
Australia did you grow up in?
Brisbane.
Brisbane. Oh, nice. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So you must know some. Let's say any sport. There's a guy who's gifted to be that well in a sport, be it a cricketer, be it a
Hmm.
football or soccer.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's inbuilt, but or be it in studies. Just you're in a class. Some guys are extremely smart inbuilt.
Yeah.
Some are very hardworking. How is the brain tuned in that way, or is it how are they gifted in a way that someone can just pick up stuff like this, and someone are extremely hardworking? Like the differentiation.
Yeah. Okay. It's what you said. It's a gift. But let's examine
Yeah.
the source of the gift. And the source of the gift
Yeah.
lies in the wiring of the brain. So essentially, as we're being formed, our brain undergoes tremendous changes. Like our body will have like 30 plus trillion cells in our body in its entirety,
Yeah.
and all those cells undergo transformations. It's the same in the brain, and that kind of becomes even more complex because of all the interchange of information between its centers. Depending on what we're
Okay.
exposed to, and also a certain degree of genetics, some people will naturally be more gifted
Yeah.
in something than others in terms of the wiring. And I think the easiest example I can give you here is somebody
Yeah.
who's a world class violinist and somebody who plays the
Okay.
violin on the weekend. Now, they can both practice a lot, but the world class violinist has an edge because the wiring in their brain allows them to hear, predict, and use the instrument faster, better, and with more finesse than the person who
Yeah.
plays it on the weekend. And no amount of training it's going to make you better if you play on the weekend, but it's not going to get you
Yeah.
to the same level because the wiring simply isn't there. This is what we call
But
talent.
can I reach that wiring? I'm a guy who plays violin on the weekend. I want
Okay.
to get to that level of a world class. If I practice day and night, can I
No,
reach that level?
no, you can't
Okay.
because, and then we have to ask why now, right? Because, okay, I said
Yeah, yeah.
no,
That's
it
why.
sounds
I get it.
terrible.
Yeah.
Okay, because a person who has that complex wiring, which makes them better than you, has a genetic predisposition to that wiring, which means that essentially,
Okay.
okay, here, I mean, this is where it gets interesting. We all have DNA, and DNA has specific
Yeah.
instructions on how to operate, how to build our body. But DNA doesn't actually do anything until the genes are switched on or are switched off. And they get switched on
Okay.
or off depending on the environment that they actually are in. So let's say that you are a world class talented person. You don't know it
Yeah.
yet, but you're a young boy. You have the ability to go to the top of your game, and
Yeah.
I don't. And I am born in in a musician's house, but I'm not talented.
Yeah.
And you're born in a
Okay.
coal miner's house, but you're talented. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be better than you. Why? Because the environment around me is pushing me to rise. The genetic changes are
Okay.
happening, and I rise. Right? You're in the house you're in. You don't have the same exposure to the same stimulus. You have the ability to get
Yeah.
there, but it doesn't get switched on. You never reach your potential. And if our situation was reversed,
Okay. Yeah.
I would never have any
Yeah.
musical talent whatsoever because I'm not inclined that way, and you would be world class.
Wow. Okay. Got it. Got it. Got it. This is
It's the same in
fantastic.
sports. It's the
Okay.
same in sports.
Yeah. Yeah. And with all the cutting edge technologies that's coming in right now, how do you think neuroscience can be linked with wellness?
Amazing question. Okay, and here's what we can actually do. Everything that we are gaining access to. I mean, at the moment, I'm wearing a smartwatch that
Yeah.
monitors my sleep. It tells me how many steps I walked a day. It has gives me my heart rate. It has a monitor which I haven't actually set up, which can even give me my blood pressure if I want to. And this
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
picture which I get from my day-to-day physical well-being, which in the past
Yeah.
would have been, the it would have been only limited to those people with exceedingly high means. If you're a sports person and you have your own
Hmm.
physician following you and your own team, or if you're very wealthy and you have your own doctor and you're doing this for your health, you could have done it. But now anybody can do it. So technology makes it more accessible.
Yeah.
We need accessibility as the first step, and we are there now, and it's going to get better. But the next thing we need is the awareness of what to do with that. I mean, now we're learning that if we move our body every day, even if it's not
Yeah.
something which has to be gym orientated, then it's good for us. So people are, talking about 10,000 steps and 5,000 steps and 20,000 steps. Just do the
Yeah.
steps. It doesn't matter how many you're doing. If you're doing them,
Yeah.
it's helping you. Same
Yeah.
thing about quality of sleep. This gives me a score. It tells me how much deep sleep I have.
Yeah.
I try to sort of listen to it as much as I can. It allows me to see how my internal world is functioning. These are tools which give us a picture of how we operate. When we actually understand
Hmm.
that, then we're in a good position to see how we can improve. So if I didn't have this, I would tell you, oh, I slept okay, but I feel tired. Sometimes I wake up and I
Yeah.
feel tired after 8 hours sleep, but I notice my
Yeah.
deep sleep is only like 50 minutes in the night, which is not enough.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
this is something which I actually know now, whereas in the past I wouldn't have been able to understand. So knowing that, I know I have to improve my deep sleep. If I want to improve my deep sleep, I need to change my perhaps
Yeah.
bedtime routine. So I don't have any stimulants like coffee. I don't perhaps exercise to exhaustion. I don't go and watch a wild movie that pumps me up and then hope to get to bed and
Yeah.
okay, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is how
Yeah.
technology is helping us better understand our inner world. And if we understand our inner world, then we basically are better protectors of our own health.
Yeah. That's very true. And how much of the circadian rhythm you mentioned about the pre-bed time and everything,
Yeah.
right? How much of it is actually directly linked to our brain and the neurosystem? Can I still eat late? Can I still sleep late? Wake up late and do all the stuff that is against the circadian rhythm? One
Mm,
we just spoke about, our brains are tuned to thousands or thousands of years where it was meant to, go to bed early because you're supposed to wake up early, go for hunting and come back. But
yeah.
now things have changed. How much of that is directly proportional to this?
Well, the effect of the circadian rhythms is inescapable. Now you're
Yeah.
asking me, can I sort of circumvent them a little bit? Can I bend the rules? Can I do this? And the answer is yes, you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's always a cost, and you have to be prepared to
Yeah.
take that cost. What is that cost going to be will
Yeah.
depend on your own physiology, and it'll differ from person to person. I have a friend of mine. He goes to bed every night at 9 o'clock, and if he misses his
Okay.
bedtime, well, if he misses his
Yeah.
bedtime, then he stays up until 12. But the next day,
Okay.
he's half dead, right,
Yeah.
mentally, because
Yeah.
he's in a fog. Okay,
Yeah.
he's in a fog because his brain hasn't had time to get rid of the toxins from the day before. His brain probably is experiencing a
Yeah.
little bit of inflammation. The centers in his brain are not aligning with each other, so he's misfiring.
Yeah.
So he's basically not functioning at his best. Okay, that's a cost to
Yeah.
him. It's quite high. Other friends of mine, they can miss
Yeah.
their bedtime, and that I don't see much of a discernible difference in their
Yeah.
behavior. So it's always a cost, and the cost is going to be different. So can you do it? The answer is yes. Will there be a
Yeah.
cost? Absolutely. How much of a cost will depend on you, and you're the only expert on you that there is. And then whether you want to do this on a regular basis or not will depend on why you're doing it. So, if it's like, oh, I
Yeah.
want to go to a rave, sure, but you don't want to go to a rave every night. Or,
Yeah.
I'm finishing a project for work and I'm gonna burn the
Yeah.
midnight oil for a week. Well, I can understand that. That's no problem. So, but be prepared to then basically recover. You need to allow yourself time to get back to your baseline.
So, and also another question related to this is, I'm trying to build muscle. I'm trying to lose fat, improve my performance in generally. What if I'm going to bed late, waking up late, but I'm still getting that 8 to 9 hours of sleep? So my question is, late dinners, late going to bed, waking up late will still have an effect on your neurological
Yeah.
mind and body, is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So, and again, how much of an
Yeah.
effect will depend on a lot of things. It'll depend on your genetics,
Yeah.
it'll depend on your own fitness levels, it'll depend on your history, how long have you been doing this for, how have you prepared
Okay.
yourself, all those things. And like I said, some people will say, okay, I'm going to do this for 3 months, and they're fine with it.
Yeah.
Some people can't. So you have to basically experiment with what is working for you. And you said, you're trying to build muscle, you're trying to lose fat, which is all of us, right? We're all trying to do the same things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going to make this easier for yourself now. And this is the advice I'm going to give you,
Yeah.
which goes for everybody in the
Yeah.
audience right now, that the most beneficial thing you can do here is actually record what you're doing. Get one of these
Yeah.
note apps on your phone, and every day you
Yeah.
train, put in the date and put in what you did and how you felt. And that gives you a
Okay.
very powerful analytical tool to see whether you're progressing when you're tired, whether there's a cyclical nature to this, whether there's a
Yeah.
periodicity to your performance, what is affecting you. And over time, suddenly, you'll find that, I understand myself a little bit better. Because just going on
Yeah.
memory, if I ask you, what did you do last month on the first day of the month? You
Yeah.
won't be able to remember. And that's normal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so that's lost now. All that data is lost. You told me, I said, did you train?
Yeah.
Yes, I did. What did you do? Oh, I can't remember. I went to the gym, I did stuff. Well, that's not good enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you get into the habit, and I know this is a big ask because our life is full of tasks, and suddenly we have an additional task to perform. But it's a small task, and if we do it every time, it becomes
Yeah.
automatic. Then it's less arduous for us to do. So if you do it, then suddenly you'll become, within a period of 2 to 3 months, an expert on your own self.
Yeah.
And I think that's an amazing thing to do.
Yeah. I'm definitely gonna try it out. I write down most of my stuff in general. Be it example, if I'm preparing something for my podcast or anything, I just make sure to write it down so that I remember it better rather than just looking at the notes. So I'd like to move on from your neurological science to the entrepreneurship. It's a
Okay.
fantastic journey, right? Chemical engineer
Mm,
to neuroscience to now to entrepreneurship. You've written so many books. I read through The Sniper Mind, and
okay.
thank you so much for sending out the new book of yours. And I'm very excited to start reading it. So
Cool. That's it.
when did this inception start to move out from the very complex and exciting and challenging neuroscience, which you wanted to move from chemical engineering? But then after that, what made you move into this entrepreneurial journey to write books and inspire people?
Well, like most people, for me, life is a journey, and that arc is not
Yeah,
remarkably different. I found something to do, which I'm good at, which helps me earn a living. And as you do that, then you ask yourself, how
yeah,
can I make the most difference? Because you need to feel that you belong. You need to feel that you're giving back to the
yeah,
world. Because whoever we are at any given point in time, we're the product of the world itself. We're the product of our environment. We're the product of our interactions with other people. We're the product of the civilization we're in. We're the product of the culture we grew up in. So all those elements go into us. So at some point, you got to say, how do I then make a difference? How do I help move the needle forward a little bit? And for me,
yeah,
it was taking complex subjects and demystifying them. And I thought, if I can do that, then that helps a lot of other people
yeah,
to basically pick up the thread and run with it, become more than they are, do better stuff, think better thoughts, be better than me. And if they can do that, then that's my contribution to the
yeah.
world.
And what is the inception and the heart to write the Sniper Mind and the new book, Built to Last?
Built to last,
Talk
yeah.
us through that journey of writing those books and what is the benefit of me reading those books?
Well, the Sniper Mine was groundbreaking at the time. I
Yeah,
wrote it back in 2016, and I basically started. 2016 was when it came out, and I
yeah.
started writing it in 2013. So it took 3 years. Actually,
Yeah.
2012. So it took almost four
Wow.
years. I had to, yeah, I had like about 300 interview hours with snipers. I interviewed 100 snipers from
Okay.
different
Yeah.
countries, and they're
Yeah.
absolutely fascinating people. Then I had to basically get into the
Yeah.
field of neuroscience, and I spent like I sort of I ended up at one point. I had like 10,000 hours going through studies, so I could have done my own
Wow, that's
PhD.
a lot.
It is,
Yeah.
it is, and
Yeah.
at one point it was so difficult because it's a
Yeah.
new field for me to
Yeah.
absorb
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
I was doubting that I was ever going to finish that book. But I'm not interested. So to cut a long story short, you think, what was the point
Yeah.
of that? Well, the point of that is that when we take somebody who is trained to the level of a sniper, they operate on their
Yeah.
own, but they're still part of a broader team. They have to be self governing, self motivated, but they have to fit in with everybody else. They have to coordinate, they have to be analytical, they have to be intuitive,
Yeah.
empathetic, they have to be inventive,
Yeah.
they have to be all those
Yeah.
things. And you think, how do they manage it? because they're just ordinary people within
Yeah.
certain brackets,
Yeah.
who are trained. They go to sniper school for 2 years. And the answer to it, which was given by very fundamentally new steps in neuroscience at the time, was to study their brain as they were actively making
Yeah.
critical decisions. And then we saw that all the different
Yeah.
parts of the brain which play a part in it. We saw what element is played by the visual part and what memory, what element is played by memory and what knowledge does and what emotional regulation does and how they emotionally regulate on a battlefield or under pressure.
Yeah.
And we take from those things, we take tips basically, which when applied to our own life. So you learn to breathe better, you learn to disconnect, you learn to decompress, you learn to break things down into small steps so they don't overwhelm you. And if you apply that to the world of business, well, because the business world is always under critical pressure, you're always making
Yeah.
life and
Of
death
course.
decisions, right, for your business.
Yeah.
So, so if you apply that, then you become a better business person. And for me, if you become a better business person, well, you become a better person.
Yeah. That's all drilling down to decision making, which we'll discuss in a bit. And then talk us through your community, Derby, which has almost more than 14,000 people benefiting from that. When did you build it, and how's it going?
Well, there became to be back in 2010, the first time around. And it was officially renamed named Derby about 5 years later. And it's basically
Okay.
a crowd-funded fitness community with a massive fitness
Nice.
resource. Um, it's run by volunteers, including myself. So basically, we
Okay.
volunteer our time and expertise. We come up with workouts which are based on exercise science. We put in culture to make them fun. We put in everything we know about what stimulates the body to become fitter while doing something fun. And
Okay.
then, once a
Yeah.
workout is put together, which can take probably about a week, we send them out to groups of volunteers across the world to try out. And they try them out in groups which have mixed sexes, mixed abilities, sometimes mixed languages. And then they give us feedback and tell us, this worked, that was harder, this one we couldn't do, and this
Okay.
one maybe we couldn't
Yeah.
understand. So we go back on the drawing board and we refine it. We send it out again.
Yeah.
We get feedback.
Okay.
So for one
Yeah.
workout, we probably need about anywhere between 6 to 10, maybe 12 weeks for one workout to be sort of fine tuned.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
We have a lot in the pipeline now, so that every week we release 4 workouts a week. But that's because we have a lot in the
Okay.
pipeline coming in all the time. But in the past,
Yeah.
we didn't have like that kind of work rate. And then we have
Yeah.
programs. When the program is a 30-day program, that can take anything between
Okay.
6 months and a year to perfect because it goes through the same sort of round of trial and feedback and new trials with new groups, new feedback. So yeah,
Nice. And how can you enroll in this?
well, just turn up at the website. There's no fees, no
Yeah.
enrollment. You just turn up at darebe.com, which is
Yeah.
darebee.com, and there it
Yeah.
is. You have all the work. It's about 2,500 workouts at the moment, and we have hundreds of programs.
That's
We have
awesome. Yeah.
challenges. So
Yeah.
basically, it's there to help you become fitter. It's there to help you become better. And the whole guiding principle for this is that fitness is a right. It's not a privilege. It shouldn't be locked
Yeah.
behind gate
Yeah.
walls. You shouldn't need money to go to the gym and access the equipment and somebody's knowledge in order to get fit. We all have the fundamental basic right to feel better
Yeah.
in our body. And if we feel better in our body, then we feel better with our brain. It makes us better people, it makes us better citizens, it makes us better, more productive. But it starts with that. And you need access to it. And we say, well, I'm a student, I don't have money to go to the gym. I don't have money, spare money to buy equipment. Well, you don't need any of that. There's a lot of workouts with no equipment, and you don't need a gym. Just download the
No,
workout.
because there's so many people who can't afford to go to an expensive gym. Now these
Yes,
days, gyms just get more expensive, especially after COVID. Everyone realized that fitness is something has to be part of your lifestyle. Like how you brush and
Yes.
you eat, you should exercise,
Yes,
So,
yes, exactly. And I think this is something which I mentioned in Built to Last. We have this wrong idea
yeah.
about fitness. We think of fitness about big muscles, about having a six pack, being ripped. All those
Yeah.
things are a byproduct of other things. If you're a boxer, if you're a sprinter, if you're a world class athlete, you're going to have those things. But being fit is different.
Yeah.
Being fit means you're comfortable in your body, truly comfortable. You're capable with your body. You don't have to have massively big muscles in order to be strong, because strength is different to just muscles.
Yeah.
There's a differentiation point. So if you manage to feel good inside yourself, then you feel good in who you are, you feel more confident, you have a happier life, and you're a better person. It's just an amazing transformation. So, you don't need to have this kind of one size fits everybody in terms of, oh, you need to have, you need to go to the gym, you need to get ripped, you need to have abs. Why? Why do you need that? We all have abs. It's just most of the
Yeah.
time we also have body
I
fat,
know.
right? So you don't see it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Just
essentially
have like a
somebody
nice
would
layer outside.
well, somebody who
Yeah.
tells you, I need to see your abs, what essentially telling you is that you need to drop your body fat. And
Yeah.
is a huge amount of medical opinion on this, which ranges from many things. But a lot of the things is that body fat is essentially stored energy, and depending on what you do and how your body operates, dropping it below a certain point is
Yeah.
not really healthy. So we use world class athletes as the epitome of fitness. For
Hmm.
sure, they're very fit in what they do and they're very capable, but they're not
Yeah.
necessarily healthy. They're underfueled, they have very little body fat, they are constantly struggling to
Exactly.
repair
Yeah.
their bodies because they're pushing it, so they're not really healthy. And the whole point is we should be healthy
Yeah.
in who we are and what we do.
That's exactly. I wanted to talk a little bit too. There's a lot of misconception of just staying fit versus staying healthy. A year and a half ago, I was pretty fit. I was running really good. My cardio was pretty good. I was lifting pretty well. But then when I did my year and I see my cholesterol is off the roof, I'm like, what the fuck? I'm doing everything right. I'm exercising. I exercise 365 days of the year. I exercise every day. I'm doing everything right. How come I have cholesterol? And then I kind of dig in. I understood that I love dairy a lot, so I was drinking a lot of whole fat milk.
Okay,
And
okay,
then
yeah.
then I kind of made little tweaks. So tell us a little bit about staying healthy versus staying fit. Obviously, both are interlinked, but we should have that balance.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
there's so many people who are really fit, they get heart attacks, and then some underlying issue that they don't realize until they concentrate on being fit, being healthy as well,
That's
which
right, yeah.
obviously comes out of from the markets and everything. Yeah, yeah,
Yep. Okay, being healthy is what you said essentially. Having all the baseline
yeah,
biomarkers, being within the kind of range that does not stress your body out and does not require excessive amounts
yeah,
of energy to maintain. So let's say that I decide to go on a really low fat diet, I can become really ripped. I will look
yeah,
really, really fit and I'll be very unhealthy
yeah,
because in order to maintain that, my body will be burning up a lot of energy just to keep me at that level, and it's unsustainable. And that is
yeah,
not a very good way to do it. And if I did it, I can guarantee you also mentally, I would not be in a good place.
yeah,
I would be tired all the time. I would be
yeah,
irritable. I
definitely.
would, I would not be a nice person to be
Yeah,
around of, and that's not very good.
yeah,
So essentially,
yeah,
essentially, we all,
yeah,
being healthy means we have that balance where the body's ability to balance itself in its inner workings, the homeostasis part of it, where everything balances out, what's coming in from the external world, what's going out to the external world, what input we put in terms of food, what output is going on in terms of the physical activities we have to do, and also what energy is required for maintenance and building and repair, cell repair. They're all balancing out so that we don't get stressed each day. And at different levels of stress, and one of it is physical stress and the other one is cellular stress. So if we get stressed at those levels, then it doesn't matter how good we look, we're really not in a good place.
yeah. That's very true. And then talk us through a little bit more about your latest book, Built to Last.
Yeah.
What made
Oh,
you write it? What's the content of the book, and how is it so beneficial to the audience who's going to read it?
Okay, Built to Last. I mean, every book has an origin story somewhere, and Built to Last
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
came from a radioactive spider bite. I'm only kidding.
yeah. Yeah,
Built to Last
yeah,
came from conversations I was
yeah,
having with a friend. I've got a friend of mine, and he works with he's in the
yeah,
police, and we train together
yeah.
once a week. And
Okay.
while we train, because we usually train for about 2 hours, and there's a social element to our
Yeah,
training because we also talk and we take turns doing things. So
yeah,
and we just had all these conversations going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And as we were talking over a period of like 3 years, I realized there's a lot of things that he doesn't know, which I kind of take for granted. And I have a blind spot, which
yeah.
my editors always point out. I don't always know what my
Yeah.
audience doesn't know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and so talking to him, I started getting this picture of
Yeah.
the misconceptions surrounding fitness to me come naturally. I understand what it is because I've worked with my body all my life. I understand the choices. I understand the pressures. I understand where you can sacrifice, where you can gain, and why. But a lot of people don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you come into fitness, and if you're new to it, suddenly you're subjected to this imagery which comes from films and
Yeah.
popular culture and fitness businesses and the
Yeah.
gym world. And they tell you, who
Yeah.
are you? You are this person. Oh, you need to look like this. And you have to say why.
Yeah.
Because in order to be fit and healthy, you need to ask yourself why you want it. What is it you want out of it? If you answer that question, then suddenly that begins to form your fitness journey. So if you say to yourself, you know what I want to get up in the morning and feel great. I want to be able to run 2, 3 kilometers without being out of breath. I want to have a good time with my friends and in my life and my business and all that without feeling exhausted all the time. And this is a fitness level you're
Yeah.
actually aiming at. So your training for that would be different to somebody who says, I want to run a marathon, or somebody who says, I
Yeah.
want to bench press 250 pounds. Well, those are different requirements. And obviously, when you're aiming for something, in order for it to become sustainable for you, you need to answer the question of why. Why do you want that? If you say, well, I want to look this way because I feel what's expected of me. This puts you in a different frame of mind. It's a different kind of
Yeah.
mindset.
Yeah.
It has its own set of
Exactly. Yeah.
problems.
Yeah.
So really, if you answer why and you're honest about it, then you begin to understand why you want some things, and then you are better prepared to pay the price for them. So if you're really dead set, you got to say, I'm going to hit the beach this summer. I want to look like this. And
Yeah.
somebody will ask, are you sure about this? You say, 100% sure. This is what I want. I really want this. Fine. What are you prepared to pay for it? If you say, well, I'm only prepared to train twice a week,
Mm.
well, it's not going to happen, right?
Yeah. It's not gonna happen. Yeah.
But if you say, I'm prepared to train 5 times a week, I'm prepared to train
Yeah.
every single day for 3 months, well, that's a different type of story. Your brain works differently, your motivation is different, your targets are different, and also you begin to better understand who you are in the process because as you change physically, you change mentally. You can't have one without the other. So
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Very
you
true.
should you should always be prepared for that journey. So that's how you approach fitness. This is where Build to Last actually helps you understand these things. It helps you understand that no matter how fit you may be, no matter how disciplined you may be, there will always be a time in your training week or your training month when you will contemplate not going training because you're too tired,
Yeah.
you're demotivated, you're disheartened, and then your brain will tell you, you're too busy, you're too serious,
Yeah.
or let's train twice as hard tomorrow, right? These are
Yeah.
the excuses which come up. Okay, we all have those excuses. And in the book, I explain the scientific basis behind them because everything that we experience biologically, even if it trips us up now, it was actually designed to help us in the past. So the moment we understand
Okay.
that,
Okay.
we say, okay, your brain is not evil. it wants the best for you. It doesn't understand the environment you're in
Okay. Yeah.
because it simply doesn't understand the environment you're in. So you need to say to yourself, okay, this is what I'm going to do to get past that. And I'll give you one example on this, which is always works, right?
Yeah.
On a cold winter's night, if you want to go training, you don't feel like it. You're going to say, oh, it's too cold,
Yeah.
it's too late, I have too many emails to reply to, too much
Yeah.
work tomorrow,
Yeah.
I'm going to do it next week and I'm going to go harder. And
Yeah.
I say, well, no, because if you miss it, it's going to be a lot harder the next time you go and you will not make up for it. So you have to go. You say, well, I don't feel like it. And I say, well, do this trick. Go for 10 minutes. Work out for 10 minutes. And
Yeah.
if that's all you can do, 10 minutes, take it. But what happens?
Yeah.
If you go and work out for 10 minutes, you're going to do an hour. You're going to do an hour and a half. Your mood will change. And we have the science
Yeah.
behind that now. We know that when muscles work, they secrete a protein that affects the motivating neurochemicals in the brain. It affects serotonin and affects dopamine. So then we tend to keep on going on
Yeah.
what we're doing. So we need to do that for
Exactly.
10 minutes. We need it for
Yes.
10 minutes.
Right. Yeah. That's the logic. Okay. Got it. Got it. And because you're talking about motivation, I want to talk about something very related to kids. I see, especially growing up in India, it's very different. All the parents just want the kids to study really, really well. As a parent, that's what you love. Sometimes the kids are not motivated enough, or they're like, pretty innocent. They're like, yeah, I don't want to study right now. And being a parent in India, especially the orthodox in Indian parents are very strict. They hate to hear the word, oh, I'm not interested, I'm lazy today. And they force the kid to study a lot. No, no, you have to study, you have to study.
Yes.
Obviously, I'm not saying the parents are stupid. They're
They
pretty
want
experienced and well
they
knowledge,
want the
but
best for their
this
kids.
is yeah, they want that's a small the connection miss between the kids' mindset of understanding and then the parents. What would you advise to parents like this? I feel the parents should probably turn it another way and kind of motivate the kid in a way.
Mm,
If you study now for 5 minutes, it'll help you in X, Y, Z, and that way the kid is going to change. Because when the kid is already exhausted, not interested, and trying to force something on the kid is going to trouble them. This is where I'm coming is to the ADHD and kids
mm.
who have attention deficiency disorder. It's not
Yep.
their fault, right? Uh, I was trying to talk to a couple of kids the other day, some friends, kids, and I was trying to talk to them, and I was just asking them this little girl, "Hey, how's your school going?" And it's not her fault because she's just thinking of 10 different things, and I understood, I want to do something for this kids kind of stuff. So that's when I told an hour ago that I'm working on an app that's kind of designed to work for the ADHD kids. So, but that's still a long way. I'm still designing what it is, but I really want to know how can a parent help the kid to improve the concentration, improve the motivation? It could be anything: gym,
Mm,
workout, studies.
mm.
How can a kid motivate themselves to do better in life and everything?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, you've answered the question, but to unpack.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm going to unpack it from a scientific point of view. So
yeah.
essentially, parents want the best for their kids, but they
Obviously,
don't.
yeah,
They don't. t- Most of the time, they don't remember what it's like being a kid. So
yeah.
they assume
I mean,
the
I don't
role of
have
the
kids, so I saw that.
yeah.
I just want to know. Yeah, yeah. Go
They
ahead.
assume the role of the coach, and
Yeah,
they also take the path of least resistance when it comes to how to motivate kids, and they have either a stick or a stick, no carrot.
okay. Yeah,
Okay, so what's the first stick? Fear. They say, you gotta
yeah,
do this. You don't do this,
yeah,
this will
yeah,
happen. Go to
yeah,
bed
yeah,
without a meal. Your father will hear about this. Whatever they say, right?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Or they say, oh, I'm going to be deeply disappointed. And again, this emotional
Yeah.
blackmail. Okay. And
Yeah, making yeah,
so what happens? Kids resist the idea of going to study because it's a stressor. They don't see the point of it sometimes. Totally get it. But now they're between a rock and a hard place. What do the kids do? They do what kids always do. They pretend to do something until
yeah,
they're found out, right? So how can we get
Yeah.
around all that? Okay, let's tackle
Yeah.
this as a problem that a coach has with a difficult player, a difficult athlete. The athlete has
Yeah.
potential. That's why the coach is interested. He doesn't know how much potential he has. The only way of finding out that potential is pushing them. But if you push them and they just pretend, well, nothing happens. They just resist you. So you turn it on its head.
Yeah.
You gotta say, okay, let's explore this as a game. How would we approach this if you want to be the best of the best of the best and everybody admires you? Give them an emotional response that's positive. Show them that what they're doing is rising instead of,
Mm.
I'm being oppressed by my own parents.
Yeah.
By my own parents.
Yeah.
So by becoming almost a partner in this journey, by being patient, by applying
Okay.
applying firm but gentle pressure,
Yeah.
because your responsibility as a parent
Okay.
is
Yeah.
to
Very
push.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Because you
Yeah.
know that's your responsibility. You're saying, okay, if I don't push and he fails in life, it's my fault. That's dreadful for a parent. So they need to push, but they also
Okay.
but they need to push in
Yeah.
a nice way. They need to push in a way that is gentle, that explains things, that provides a carrot. Maybe we have rewards. You say, okay, you get this, and maybe we'll do that. Or, let's see what happens if this happens, how you feel about it. Acknowledge the feelings of the kids. They need to be, they're mini adults, basically, okay? They just don't have the experience.
Yeah.
They need to feel seen. They need to feel heard. They need to feel acknowledged, and they also need to be guided because they're still children. So in that complex situation, and there's no right or wrong here. There's no perfect parent or perfect
Yeah.
perfect kid. But in this push and pull, if you are an attentive parent, you'll find a way to gently guide your children to where you want them to be, and also be aware of um, their own sort of interests which feed into their dominant genes and their talents.
Wow. Very true. It's such good information. Maybe when I have kids in the future, I'll implement all of this. Try to be a good parent. Yeah. So I want to come back to your entrepreneurial journey.
Okay.
What advice would you give to wannabe entrepreneurs or any young folks wanting to get into the wellness field? What would your advice be? Where should they start? And if they want to follow your footsteps in terms of building something from the base of neuroscience or transitioning from one field to the wellness and educating people by writing books,
Yep.
where can they start?
Okay. So let's think about this now. If you're in business these days, the top performing business people are incredibly sensitive to their own well-being and their own health, and they take care of it because they know that that's what actually allows them to be productive, to be inventive, to be capable, to be driven,
Yeah.
to be focused. Now, if you want to get into the wellness field, which is growing all the time, you need to answer a simple question before you find a business model. How can I serve? That's what you need to ask. And if you
Yeah.
find a way to answer that that makes sense, then you can build a model around that, which allows you to then also perhaps make a living out of it, whether it's writing books or creating an app or creating a company or providing a service or any combination of these things. So, how do we approach this? We approach this from the same way that we approach any kind of business that has a future. And funnily enough, now that we're talking about it, not too long ago, I looked at a study that was carried out by, um, I think it was the University of Indiana, that looked at Finnish companies that are over 100 years
Okay.
old. And the question they are
Nice.
trying to
Yeah.
answer is how do these companies survive over this long period of time when so many other things change around them? And they asked the founders, they asked the owners, they asked the CEOs, and this is what they found. They found that these people at the top were not um, end results driven, they were driven by conduct. So basically, they had
Okay. Yeah.
as fundamental drives for their companies. They had things like honor, integrity, community service, being of use in the world, that kind of thing. That's their guiding element that allows them to survive the ups and downs in the market over a 100-year period. and actually be a company that's 100 years old. Whereas, we see today a lot of focus on the last quarter and shareholder value and innovation and
Yeah.
productivity, all the things we use in business, right? Productivity, innovation, competitiveness, price point competition, all those things. And those things are meaningless if your code of conduct is not allowing you to feel good about what you're doing. So
Gotcha. Yeah.
if you feel good about what you do, the challenges of running a business don't go away. They'll always be there. But then you'll make arguably better use of the tools you have to remain competitive, to
Yeah.
remain innovative, to provide a service at a good profit, and so on and so on.
Yeah. And this also drills down to what we spoke in the beginning, right? Not short goals, but it's the long term marathon goals, wanting to build a company and stay
Yes.
relevant, correct? And what is going through your mind while building a 14,000 members community, writing all those numerous books? And what is your favorite out of those books, though?
Oh, it's hard to say because every one of them is so different, and
Mhm.
it's part of
Yeah.
a deep dive into something else, and then eventually they
Yeah.
all tie together. So it's hard to say I have a favorite. But what I will say is there's a uniting thread in all of them. And bear in mind, I've written books about search engine optimization. I wrote a book about
Yeah.
semantic search before Google's Hummingbird came out. Um, Social media marketing, online business development, trust,
Yeah.
okay, decision making, all those things, right? So you think,
Yeah.
okay, this is such a different, but it isn't, because
Yeah. Yeah.
all those things, every single one of them, is part of human behavior. And what really intrigues me is how we behave and why. This is the thing in me, the curiosity thing. I need to understand why this is happening. This is the eternal child in me. I always ask, why? Why is this happening? Why do we do this? Why don't we
Yeah.
do something else? And when we do this and we do it consistently, why is it happening and what does it show about us? So I delve into these subjects, looking for the threads which make us more human. My desire, if you like, is to understand for us, for me, why I operate the way I do. Why is it important to me to understand these things?
Yeah.
So, trying to explain that is why I write these books. So, I'm trying
Gotcha.
to give
Yeah.
us a better idea of how we can be better people, understand ourselves better, be better at what we do, and also be more knowledgeable at what we do.
Yeah. Very inspiring, though. I want to go back. I want to touch base with decision making that you just brought up.
Okay.
This is something that a lot of people struggle with, and I myself am trying to better myself with decision making. I'm a manager at work, so I got to take a lot of decisions. Something that I
Yeah.
really want to become better at decision making. When you have 10 options, how do you choose the best one? Let's talk a little more about this. How did you become better in yourself in decision making, and what are the factors that come into the play while taking a decision? Could be anything,
Mm.
something related to personal, something related to work, or something related to a life changing decision, because all your decisions seem to work for you, from a decision to getting to chemical engineering to a decision to move to neuroscience and then to this. So talk us through that.
I can't help laughing when you say
Yeah.
that because this is
No,
not
I
how
know
I,
from the
this is not how
outside
I see
it
it.
might feel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I understand that. From the
Okay.
outside in, you think, it's
Yeah.
clever
Yeah.
planning and dedication and
Yeah.
persistence and discipline, right? And it's none of those things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Essentially,
Yeah.
it all happened because all this happened the way it happened because I tried to focus, and this will also become the answer to your question. I tried to
Sure.
focus
Yeah.
at what feels good to me, what makes me feel better. For instance,
Yeah.
I I know how to manage people, but I hate managing people because
Okay.
the
Yeah.
larger the team is, the more games you play, and the more you manipulate people, and after a while, it becomes really really soul destroying. So
Yeah.
I did have a team I was managing in a corporate environment for 7 years, and I experimented a lot on them because I wanted to feel better. And what I did eventually is I allowed them to be. the best they could be in everything they could, and I was there to support them. So I changed that role
Okay.
around. And as I supported them, I find myself changing. I grew in that role. So then
Yeah.
that becomes the answer to this. If you're making a decision, we make countless decisions every day. Some of them are small and some of them are big. But all of them
Yeah.
cumulatively become our life, and all of them take us to the next step. So you need to have, even if you don't know where the next step is leading, and I didn't when I make decisions, I can't see
Yeah.
20 years in the future. I can visualize something, but it doesn't mean I'm going to get there. So when you're making decisions, you need to be able to live with them completely. They need to feel good to you. Not just from a justification point of view. You can justify humans, you can justify just about anything. We can justify the worst atrocities in the world and we can put logic behind them. But you need to be able to live with those decisions emotionally. And if you can do that without feeling a load inside you, that's a very good guide on that the decision was good. It doesn't matter if it was easy or it doesn't matter if it was hard. It was a good decision for you to make.
And how do you disconnect or take a decision by not getting emotionally attached? Because when there's a lot of emotion involved, there's some scope to make mistakes, right?
Absolutely.
Let me give you a small example. You're living in a place, and you want to move to a new place. You move to a new place, and it didn't work out. What do you do after that? Just an
Well,
example. So,
yeah,
how would
okay.
you?
I think it's a great
Uh,
example.
yeah,
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 the first thing you need to ask is why didn't it work out? You need to understand that.
yeah,
You need to understand why is it not? Why is it going wrong? Why is it not what you thought? Were your expectations wrong? Was your data wrong? You didn't have enough information.
yeah,
Were the things which you did subsequently after moving to the place wrong? Was your behavior not
yeah,
right? So you need to sort of analyze it. And if you analyze it and address it and understand it, okay, now you have um, a blueprint, a template on how to fix it. Because you say, okay,
yeah,
my behavior was wrong. I came to this place and I behaved like I was king of the castle, for instance. Or I came to
yeah,
this, or the other end of the spectrum. I came to this place, I didn't make any friends, I didn't interact with my colleagues, I didn't find a romantic
yeah,
partner, I didn't even get a dog. Okay, so your
yeah,
experience of that place is very lonely and isolated and disorientating, and it doesn't help you fit in. All these things were wrong.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, but
yeah,
now,
yeah,
now you understand what you have to change. You say, okay, do I need to change my behavior or do I need to change the place? Do I need to go to another city and find another job, or do I need to change something
yeah,
right now? And if you start thinking about these things, that allows you to understand how you feel about it and how you
yeah,
divorce. I mean, every decision we make, absolutely everyone, is emotional. That's the basis
yeah, yeah,
of the motivation for the decision. But it can't be emotional in terms of it's done in the heat of the moment. We need to be able to understand our emotions.
gotcha.
And again, when I was talking to my SEAL friends, I said, you guys must be, we were discussing
Yeah,
missions, and these are missions where they can potentially die. And I was telling them, I can't even imagine how they compartmentalize their emotions. And they said, "What? No, no, we don't. We are afraid of getting killed.
yeah,
We're afraid of
yeah,
getting killed. We're
yeah,
afraid of not, failing at our job. We are afraid of
yeah,
making a mistake and getting one of our friends killed, which is really important.
yeah,
This is like we're afraid of all those things." And I said, "Well, how do you guys deal with that?" And they told me, "Well, we embrace it. We understand this is normal. We embrace it. And the moment you embrace it, it stops running you because you own it.
yeah,
And the moment you own it, now you're in control because you don't let the fear control you. The fear is there, but you let the thinking control you. But if you don't acknowledge that, it's a
okay,
fear guiding you, and that's wrong. Your reactions are going to be wrong.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
I internalize what they said and I apply it to my own life.
gotcha, yeah. And what is that one top thing that differentiates from the top performers to the regular performers, or that
Oh,
process of
now,
the number one mind shift?
yes. Well, let's talk about that. This is
Yeah,
interesting. Okay, there was
yeah,
again a Stanford University study on this. Now, the
yeah,
army spends an incredible amount of money in picking Navy
sure,
SEAL
yeah,
teams, and they train them, and it costs them an incredible amount of money, and they equip them with
yeah,
incredibly
yeah,
expensive
yeah,
stuff. I mean, just their night gear, that's their night vision gear, costs about $25,000.
yeah,
for one piece, right? So
Yeah,
the
it's expensive.
so
Yeah,
yeah, so the army is
yeah,
really interested in refining the process so that they have better picks and fewer dropouts. And the dropout rate, Navy SEALs go through a very rigorous training program. They're already fit when they join, so they don't have to get fit. They put through
yeah.
the training program, which lasts 4 weeks. And I think about second week or the third week of that is called Hell Week. So for 7 days, they literally are pushed to the limit of their
Yeah.
ability. They go on for about 2 3 hours sleep a
That's
night. They go in with very
that's so
little
fucking
food.
hard.
Yeah, and not only that, but
Yeah,
you're on two,
yeah.
3 hours sleep, right? And you have to jog for about 15, 20 miles. And when you get to where you go to, they ask you, 5 miles in, there was a sign on the road, which way did you point? And you have to be able to recall that. They're
Oh
incredible.
wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, they
Yeah,
push them
yeah,
so
yeah.
hard that
Sure. Yeah.
75% of them, 75% of them drop out on that week.
Okay.
So the
Yeah, yeah,
army studied to see, okay, on paper, the
yeah,
ones that dropped out were not significantly different from the ones that stayed.
yeah,
So the army was really interested to find out what was the difference really? If on paper they can't tell, what was the real difference between the two groups of people? The ones that dropped out and the ones that made the
yeah,
grade. And this is what they found.
yeah,
As they go through that week, which is designed to diminish you, it's designed to break you, it's designed to make you feel helpless and weak.
yeah.
The people who stayed and got through the course went through every single trial thinking, this is tough, but it's making me better. And
Okay. Yeah.
the
It's a
people who
decision
dropped,
that you took. Yeah.
yeah, it was a glass
Yeah.
half full, half empty situation. The people who dropped out,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
thought, this is hell and it's killing me.
Yeah. Got
Physically,
you.
on
Yeah.
paper, the
Yeah.
skill sets were almost similar, identical. So it was so difficult to set them apart. But in their head, they processed the same stimulus differently, and the outcome was different. And now that brings us back to what we said earlier about the two groups of maids. They're doing the same
Yeah.
job. One group
Yeah.
is thinking, I'm cleaning beds and emptying bins
Yeah.
and changing sheets and I'm getting fitter. And the other group thought this job is a job. And the group that thought I'm getting fitter actually got fitter. And the group that
Nice.
thought
Yeah.
this is work didn't. So that mindset is really, really important. It's actually, and where does it come from? It comes from being able to regulate your emotions. The people who dropped out, they
Yeah.
were strong, they were fit, they were capable, and they thought, this is too much. This is hurting me. I can't take it anymore. And the people who made it, they were pushed to the limit of their ability, and they thought, this is hell, but heck, I'm
Yeah.
loving it because it's making me better.
Nice.
So there's
And
a
also,
difference.
this is this is also driven out of the love and passion for that specific field, right?
Certainly, I wouldn't necessarily always say love and passion, although
Yeah.
admittedly
Yeah.
these play a part. But what I would say is that
Yeah.
it comes from knowing who you are, knowing what you want to do, being determined to do it. If you are determined to do
Okay.
something and you're really dialed in on that, it means a lot to you.
Yeah.
You are definitely more capable than somebody who might have more talent than you, but they're not as focused. And you have the advantage then.
Got you. And how can I train my brain and how can I tune my neurons to help me take those better decisions? Because every day could be a series of decisions that you take can make or break you. Now, I'm not
Absolutely.
saying that extent, but
No, no, no.
if I want to get better in taking better decisions, basically it involves looking at all the degrees around a decision. It could be anything. Example, I'm going to start a company, and maybe right from there you take so many decisions, right?
Yeah,
So you're starting a
absolutely.
company, and right from there, be it hiring people, be it trying to solve the problem. It all starts with even basic idea of what you want to start up,
Mm,
start, right? So based on that, but this is just an example. But in my day to day, how can I make my decision making better?
that's an excellent question. Okay. It always comes
Mhm.
down to you who and your why, who you are and why you're doing it. But at the same time,
Yeah.
if you know those things, then you have better control of the emotions you feel. So, if, for instance, you're doing something and you
Okay.
started a company, right? You started a company and you
Yeah.
know that everybody's looking at you. It's a startup, they expect amazing things, and you need to make the decision, the next decision that day. You have to ask yourself, okay, next decision
Yeah.
I'm going to make, why am I going to make it? Am I going to make it because it's expected of me, or am I going to make it because it's a right decision for my company and I don't care what everybody else thinks about it? And then if you say it's a right decision for my company, you need to also understand what is your company intended to do. Is it one of those sort of churn and burn startups you're going to sell to somebody?
Yeah.
Or is it something which is going to give a future to the people you work for? It's going to give you something to build as part of your legacy, and it's going to contribute something to the world. Those things are two different animals. So if you understand that, then your decision making is going to be always spot on. If you don't understand it, you're still going to make decisions, but they're not going to be your decisions. They're going to be the decisions which circumstances force upon you. And circumstances will change, and the next decision will be different. And if circumstances will change again, and the next decision will be different. Okay, then you don't govern your company. You're governed by the external world who tells you what you should be doing, how you should run
Yeah.
it, and how your company should be.
Yeah. Yeah. This is absolutely great information. Uh, I took a lot of notes, but let's see. Like I got to go back and revisit all this.
Okay.
So I want to go back to your childhood
Okay.
or that emotion. What would you like given if given a time machine, you send back 20, 30 years back, what would you tell yourself, uh, a young David?
Hmm. I'd say be less angry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Anger is a
And there's
natural
one. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
anger is a natural response we have when we are in situations where we
Yeah.
don't always feel in control of. And for a large part of my life, I had this burning anger inside me, which drove me to do things without me internalizing the why.
Yeah.
I would have been
Okay.
a much better person if I didn't have that anger.
And one piece of advice, I think you already gave that, but if one thing you would change, go back and change something to maybe change the trajectory or anything that you would tell yourself other than the anger. But I know the anger part was a piece
Yeah,
of advice,
I
but a
wouldn't change
decision that you
anything.
would change.
I wouldn't. There's no perfect. And I think where I am right now
Yeah.
is the sum total of everything else that
Yeah.
I've done up to here. And I feel great right now. I feel
Yeah.
absolutely fantastic. So changing something in the past because it was harder may not get me here
Yeah.
now. So I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. And what is the hardest, one of the hardest part of your life? Be it personal, professional, anything.
Well, there have been a lot of difficult moments, obviously. Like everybody else, life is up and
Yeah,
down,
yeah, of course.
right? So there's no perfect.
Problems in life are
Yeah, yeah.
inevitable.
Whoa, what has been the hardest part of my life? I don't know. I mean, I never felt that I was
Yeah.
ever in a sort of really, really, really such a hard place. I would never do it again. And I've been through situations where I actually had to. I was homeless for a while, for
Yeah.
about 3 weeks.
Oh
Due,
shit.
yeah,
Sorry
yeah.
about that.
So
Yeah.
it's okay. So I had to live in my
Yeah.
car, and this sort of
Yeah.
things. But I
Yeah.
wouldn't change any of that, right? So, and none of it killed me. I approached everything as part of the adventure and the outcome of my
Yeah.
actions. So I owned that, and I sort of grew from that and
Yeah.
developed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So would I change any of that? I'm trying to think. I wouldn't. Difficult as it is, and
Yeah.
I'm sure
Yeah. It's all.
at the
Yeah.
time you think this is this is terrible. I wouldn't change it.
Gotcha. And out of all the success that you have had, the most joyful or the most heart touching, happiest moment?
There have been there have been an incredible number of happy moments, and let's discuss
Yeah.
happiness, right? Because this is important. We tend to have this
Yeah.
idea that happiness is a state you achieve,
Yeah.
and it's kind of not quite. It's a process that
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
actually reach, right? So you're happy while you're doing something.
Okay.
You're happy because you got through something. And if we look at the
Yeah.
neurochemical definition of happiness, it's
Sure. Yeah.
the fulfillment of
Yeah.
um, a need that makes us feel uncomfortable. So if you To give you a very basic
Okay.
example,
Yeah.
if you go
Yeah.
without water for 36 hours, not a drop, nothing,
Yeah.
you're going to get pretty thirsty. And I give you a small glass of
Yeah.
water, and you drink it, and it's the best thing you ever tasted, and you actually feel happy.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's happiness, right?
Yeah.
So there've been countless moments
Yeah.
like that. So there's no real happier or happiest moment, because I think to achieve the happiest means that
Yeah.
the bar is so high you'll never get to it again. So
Yeah. Proudest moment?
proudest moment, I was really proud of my first book, I suppose, which was SEO Help,
Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
because at the time SEO was a really um, densely worded, opaque field of action that nobody knew what
Okay.
SEOs did. Business people didn't understand what SEOs could do. They didn't feel competent to inquire. And I brought it out in simple language with some steps. It had 20 steps, and basically said, this is what it is. You do that, that's why you do it. I didn't explain it in great depth because it was for the layperson. And that
Hmm.
had such a massive appeal in the market at the
Yeah.
time. People started
Yeah.
calling me to go and give speeches. The whole thing started from that. So I was really proud of that.
Yeah.
So
And it was also mentioned in Forbes, right?
yes, that's
Your
right. Yeah,
work was also mentioned in
yeah,
Forbes, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Tell us a little bit about that. Yeah.
I wrote. Well,
Yeah.
Forbes did a piece, and then I started writing for Forbes as part of their brand voice platform. And I started
Beautiful.
working.
Yeah. What do you write for Forbes?
I was writing technical business stuff, like how do you engender trust in a business environment when a business environment involves
Yeah.
20,000 employees in two different countries, stuff like that. And
Yeah.
then how do you become human as a company when you have a massive edifice, which is your building, and nobody knows who you are and what
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah.
So these are
Yeah.
these are aspects, small aspects of the bigger picture of who we become and what we do, which
Okay.
fascinates me. So I was talking about that, and then I started working with C-suite
Yeah.
executives on the same subjects. And I
Yeah.
suppose I was in Las Vegas in
Yeah.
2014, I think, 2015, as part of, I was on stage talking to the Automotive Association of the United States, 3,500 people in the audience,
Yeah.
talking to them about trust.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah. So there,
Yeah.
fascinating stuff. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I sort of had these
Yeah.
experiences.
Very nice. So, and also a quick fire question. So you got to answer
Okay.
without thinking too much. Favorite place you ever lived in?
Um, Sydney.
Favorite food?
Um, Chinese, sweet and sour.
Would you emphasize on working out early in the morning or late in the night?
Work out when you can, so it doesn't matter.
And your definition of success?
Feeling free. And
Feeling free.
and yeah, and that means basically that you reach a stage where
Yeah.
you don't allow the external world to determine your actions,
Yeah.
which doesn't mean you're
Okay.
the king of
That's
the
nice.
world. It means that you're capable of taking the
Yeah, yeah,
consequences.
yeah, yeah. That's really great. And yeah, before we close it, I have another couple of quick questions.
Okay.
We spoke about happiness, right?
Okay.
A little
Yeah.
bit more about that. How can someone feel more happier in this present world because there's so much of chaos,
Hmm.
there's so much of things going around.
Hmm.
How to improve your gratitude, how to improve your happiness?
There are two ways, and they're both practical. The first one is practice gratitude. Understand what it is that you have that's actually good for you, whether it's your friends, your situation, your
Yeah.
dog, whatever it is. But go through every morning, and this is important. It takes about 5 minutes, and just think, what are you really grateful for in your life? And that really grounds you. And then the second thing is
Yeah.
list your expectations. What are they realistically? And those expectations then become the the test for how you feel about the things that happen around you.
And before we close out, what are your next goals from here? Starting as in your professional journey as a chemical engineer, and then a neuroscience, and then moving on to the entrepreneurial journey. You've gained so much success. You've done so much good in your life, and you mentioned it from a point where you were just living out of a car to such a big guy right now. What are your next goals from here?
I obviously I'm going to keep on writing. I just don't know exactly how. But writing is a technology that allows us to essentially take the thoughts of one person and implant them into the brain of another person.
Yeah.
And I think that's magic because once those thoughts take root, that other person is smarter, better, more proficient. They can do more. They can be more. I'll keep on doing that. So where it takes me, I have no idea.
Thank you so much, David. It was so good talking to you. I've learned so much, uh, and I truly appreciate your time. I truly appreciate everything that you do in terms of neuroscience, in terms of quantum, in terms of educating people in health, fitness, wellness, and everything that you do. So
It's
it's
been a
been an
real pleasure.
absolute pleasure. And
Same
thank you
here.
so much. Yeah.
It was fantastic. Thank you so much for the opportunity
Yeah.
to be here. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Active Hour podcast. We hope you loved the episode. If you did, please give us some love in the reviews. Guess what? No ChatGPT was used in the making of this episode. Until next time, bye.